Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joe Walsh, and I am the Development Officer for the LGBTQIA plus Heritage Project. And we have the monthly History Club, so you're very welcome. The History Club is part of the project, and it's in partnership with the Hall Library, Here NI, the Rainbow Project, and Cara Friend. And it's all made possible with funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And tonight we have the pleasure to introduce Jennifer Clifford, also known as the Yorkshire Lass. And Jennifer is going to try and condense her fabulous, colourful past experiences into around 30 to 45 minutes for us. There may be time at the end for a few questions. And Jennifer, if we can just start at the very beginning, and from the small pit village in the South Yorkshire coalfields. What was that like growing up there? And then if you can tell us then what
Well,
did it come to
yeah.
the
Well,
area?
I come from that generation where my grandfather worked down the pit. I had three uncles worked down the pit, and two brothers worked down the pit. So it was sort of a traditional sort of mining family where the women stood in front of the kitchen sink and were quiet and just made sure that the kids were fed and that the dinner was on the table when they come home from the pit. So it was very traditional. Uh, and I didn't understand why I felt the way I did. Um, and I think I can remember when I was about 4, I just felt different to other little boys. And I just sort of gravitated towards my sister and her friends, at that age. So, because I felt more comfortable in their company, I wouldn't, how boys can be competitive and boisterous. Never felt comfortable. Anyway, I couldn't understand why I felt this way. Uh, and when you're that age, you're playing doctors and nurses. Yeah, I was the one that always ended up pregnant. So, I think the first time that I realised what was sort of biting me was I was about 7, and I knew that I was female, that I was a girl. I just knew it intrinsically. But in those, I mean, I couldn't go to my dad, you know, with a big bus and miner and say, "Oh, Dad, I'm really a girl," because he'd have just said, "Don't be stupid," go get Colin. And in those days, I mean, the first time I ever heard the word transgender was when I was 17, and that was when remember Caroline Cossey and April Ashley were two very famous trans women. And Caroline Cossey, if you remember, she was a Bond girl, um, and she was outed. So one of her erstwhile friends on the Bond set said, "Did you know that Caroline used to be a boy?" And so, to preempt the terrible stories that were probably going to be written in the Sunday Mirror about her, she volunteered to tell her life story. And what she was saying was exactly how I felt. When I was growing up, you know, didn't feel different, felt like a girl at quite an early age. I'd gone through puberty at 12, which was horrendous because I thought my body was betraying me. Um, I um, I looked quite girly until puberty hit, and then hair started sprouting all over the place and muscles and things. And that's when I first started to self-harm when I was at 12, 13. When I was 17, that's when I first came across that word transgender because of Caroline Cossey and April Ashley's story. And I knew then what was wrong with me. But in those days, the only treatment that the National Health offered anyway at that time was electric shock treatment and aversion therapy. And I was being tormented enough by the way I felt. So I thought, well, everybody's saying I'm a guy. Uh, I'll get on with it. So I did all the male jobs. I became a mechanic and all this stuff and hated it because of the oil going under my fingernails and sitting in a room full of guys with page 3 girl pictures all around the tea room, and talking about the girlfriends and the wives, and it was horrendous. And I think 17 was the first time I tried to commit suicide. And I went through 3 episodes of trying to commit suicide. The later one, the last one, was just before I ended up going to the gender identity clinic in Belfast. Gone through 2 marriages, and gender dysphoria killed them because I wanted to be where my partner was, and it just didn't work. And like I said, everybody said it was a guy, so I tried to be the guy, and as you can see, I failed immensely. Really failed being a guy. It was maybe 15, 16 years ago when I was going through a bad patch with my then partner, and it was my youngest daughter that said, "Look, if you two don't sit down," because they both knew that I was transgender. I'd said that when we got together, and my youngest daughter said, "Look, if you don't talk about this, you're going to kill each other." So she asked me the $6 million question, which was, "Are you going to transition?" And I had to say yes, because if I didn't transition, then I wouldn't survive another year. You know, it was that difficult and that traumatic. And that's what gender dysphoria is. Gender dysphoria is what trans people, what we're afflicted with, if you like. It's a killer. If you don't get it sorted, it will kill you. It's like any serious depression. Because you don't, it's the old story of around peg in a square hole. It just doesn't fit. And my body just didn't fit who I was in my head. And there is no such thing as a male brain and a female brain. We've scientifically proven that. But there are similarities between trans women and cis women's brain and in the hypothalamus and places like that. So there might be a biological reason for it, but at the end of the day, trans people just need help to find who they really are. And I went, like all trans people, I went to my local GP, who was a lady doctor, a very kind lady doctor, because she was living on the Newton House coast at the time. And I said, "I've got gender dysphoria, I need to go to the gender identity clinic in Belfast, because I've done all my research." That's one thing about transgender people, we're really good researchers, and we've had to be good researchers because that's the only way we can find anything out, because nobody tells us anything about it, about what it is. Anyway,
So,
I said to her,
were you in Yorkshire still at this stage?
no, at the time we moved, because my youngest daughter married a local guy. So my partner had health problems, so we came over here to be nearer, because she moved over with her husband, who became her husband, and we moved over to be close because my wife, my ex-partner's health condition, and that's why we came. But so yeah, I said to my doctor, "I need to go to the Belfast Gender Identity Clinic," and she said, "Well, you know more about it than me, so I will refer you." So 5 weeks later, which is unknown nowadays, 5 weeks later, I was having my first meeting with the team at the Belfast Gender Identity Clinic. And 3 weeks later, I had my first assessment, and I needed somebody, although I suspected that I was transgender and knew that I was a transgender woman, I still needed somebody to say, "You are transgender," and that's what the clinic did. My therapist at the clinic said, "Yes, you're transgender, so this is what we propose to do with your treatment." And that was, I didn't look back from then. It took me 4.5 years to transition, but that's because I had family responsibilities I had to sort out. In those days, 2.5 to 3 years was the length of time for a transition. These days, you're looking at up to 7 years. And all the time gender dysphoria is destroying you as a person. And it's tough for youngsters these days. And that's why I tell my story, because I don't want youngsters going through the 35 years of agony that I went through. Anyway, so I ended up in Derry. This is where I came to transition because I had friends here. And whenever I came to Derry, I was came as Jennifer, so there was no previous history. And I love Derry anyway, it's a wonderful place. And they welcomed me with open arms. And what I did was, I decided there was no way that I was going to sit and hide in my flat. So I went to the North West College, technical college here, and I did an health and welfare course, which part of it was a module on psychology. And I've always been interested in psychology and counselling. So that's why I did that course. And I was quite naive, not knowing there was a foundation course. Okay, so one day my tutor said to me, Jennifer, I want you to write a personal statement. I said, okay. I wrote this statement, I give it to her, and she said, you know, this goes round to all universities, don't you? And I thought, oh my God, what have I written? And that's how eventually I got an offer from Queen's University, and an offer from Ulster University, Magee, the Magee campus, because that's where the School of Psychology was, to start psychology degree, which I did. Blagged my way into Magee, did my psychology degree, and then stayed on and did a master's in applied psychology. And so that's my research area, is trans issues. So both my theses that I did, both my thesis for my degree and my masters were on transition and the effects of estrogen. So they were probably the first trans research pieces that had ever been done, I think, you know. But I'd always wanted to be in university. I'd always wanted, when I was 16, I wanted to go to university, and my stepfather then, because my own father had died, but my stepfather then said, no way, you know, you either get a job or you're down the road. And so coming to Derry, it fulfilled that dream. And I'm involved with Foyle Pride Committee. I've been involved with Foyle Pride Committee about 5 or 6 years now. And I just love Derry. I just love the people. The people are a lot like where I come from South Yorkshire. You know, they've got the same sense of humour, and they call a spade a spade. They don't call it an implement used in horticulture or construction industry. They call it a flipping spade. And I just love being here. And Jennifer blossomed here. This is where Jennifer became the person that you see today, was because I came to Derry. I don't know if I'd have stayed in the UK where I would be. I probably wouldn't be, you know, I wouldn't exist anymore. You know, I would have ended it. Because, like I said, gender dysphoria is serious stuff. Serious stuff. So that's sort of the potted version. And I've been in Derry 15 years this year. So, yeah.
Wow. And I imagine Foyle Pride is a lot of hard work.
I tend to be with Foyle Pride. I tend to be the gopher, one of the gophers, and my sort of forte is following. You know, that huge red flag that we've got for Foyle Pride. You know,
Yeah.
you could land a jumbo jet on it. It's huge. Well, I'm usually the one that's making sure that people don't trip up over curbs or you know, make them sing. You know, all the youngsters sing, because it's a privilege to carry that flag.
Great. And you've also been involved with Trans Dairy, is that right? The group.
Yes, yeah, I was one of the founder members of Trans Derry, which was set up by, I don't know if people remember Sean Moran, who was one of the facilitators for the original facilitators for the Rainbow Project. And it's under his guidance that we started Trans Derry, because there was nothing for trans people at all. even in Rainbow at the time. And so, he was a great man, and yeah, we had some times together. Me and Sean. I remember once he said, "Jennifer, I've got a wee trans girl, and I don't know what to say or what to do when it comes to a wee trans girl. Would you mind talking to her?" And at the time, we used to meet in Derry in a little street called Queen Street, in a little white building that the office was one floor, but it was about as big as this office. And then downstairs was the meeting, and then there was a small sort of meeting area next to it. So it was just like being in a bedroom, his office. And he sat there, and I'm waiting for this week. I said, "Sean," I said, "What, love?" I said, "You'll have to leave because this is confidential." Oh, yeah. He said, "Oh, yeah, okay." And he was a wonderful guy. Yeah. We Transderry, you know, we love Sean to bits. And Rainbow, because Rainbow um, not always stood by us, but um, lately they are. The last maybe 8 or 9 years, they've been very good with the trans community. And, yeah, yeah.
Can you tell us about the mural that Transderry helped to create? It was
Yes, it was because the thing about Rainbow and the thing about uh, the community in Derry is we're very artistic. And the Peace Wall is, the free wall of Derry is a wonderful thing. It is a wonderful thing. But you can't obviously paint over free Derry Wall. So what we did, we built a big mural, but it was on a frame and on a canvas. And it took us about 3 weeks, and we did it here in Rainbow, and it was huge, because it covered the free wall. And it was called Transgender Champions. So it was like superheroes who were all trans superheroes. And yeah, it went down really well, and we dedicated it. I think it was, if I remember, just before Transgender Day of Remembrance, if I remember. I'm not sure. I think that's what it was done for. So not like November. So yeah, it was amazing, and it weren't just the trans community that worked on it. It weren't just Transderry that worked on it. It was the whole rainbow community um, in Derry. All the youngsters helped, and they were paint flying and all over the place, and such crack. Because like I said, the one thing about Derry people is they're good crack.
absolutely.
So that was one. Yeah, I was involved with that project, and a few other projects we've done. We had a creative writing group, which was the LGBTQ plus creative writing group, which we did small pamphlets of poetry that we'd written, and we managed to get it produced under the auspices of a wonderful local performance artist and poet and writer and organizer, Mel Bradley, um, uh, who edited all our ramblings, if you like. But yeah, so we've done things like that. We're always doing something. There's always something happening in Derry Rainbow, and obviously for Pride.
So is that group a resource for trans people? Is it a drop in and activities and things in Derry?
Yeah, yeah. Before COVID, we'd meet uh, every 2 weeks, I think it was, if I remember. My memory's not so good as it used to be. And we'd try and do, all sorts of stuff, and just talk about what life was like, and how we could help each other. Um, but the rainbow community in Derry has always been like that. We all help each other. We help the youngsters. The youngsters help everybody else, and it's such a really vibrant community to be involved with, especially being a blow-in, as I say, a funny accent. I can remember when I first I came to Derry, and somebody said to me, "You're from England, you aren't you, Jennifer? I said, no, I'm not. I'm from Yorkshire. There's a difference. You know, England is south of Watford. and, and I think because of my sense of humour is very much like local people, I think that's why I've gelled so much in there.
What about links back to Yorkshire? Have you ever been back there since you transitioned, or is that something you would ever
No,
consider?
because it brings back memories. And I tend to think that the things that happened there in Yorkshire happened to my brother. You know, it didn't happen to Jennifer.
Yeah.
And I sort of wipe that completely clean. Um, as I get older, I sometimes go back to, usually it's when I was a child, remembering the things when I was a child, because it wasn't so hard. When I became a teenager, that's when it got really, really hard. Um, so, but I haven't been back for it because it's not the same. You know, I grew up in the miners' community where everybody looked out for everybody, and the miners' strike, again, I'm a socialist. The Tories destroyed that community. That community doesn't exist anymore. And it was such a shame because a lot like Derry, people helped each other. I mean, my grandmother used to bake for a village, for the pit village, you know, um, and not expect any money or anything for it. You know, if people wanted a homemade bread, she'd give them it, you know. I mean, she taught me to bake. I was telling somebody today that my granny taught me that. I can't do it now, like, but she taught me how to bake. And and it was things like that there were no doors, you know, locked. You know, you could walk into each other's houses and it'd be, hey, what are you doing here? You know, and they'd get the tea out, you know, just like it is here over in Ireland, you know,
Yes.
the world's problems are solved by a cup of tea and a biscuit, you know what I mean?
Most of them are definitely. And what about over the years, Jennifer? Have you noticed? I mean, I've certainly noticed a change in attitudes. Currently, a backlash, in particular towards trans women, are the target of at the minute of a lot of moral panic. And is that something that you are acutely aware of at the minute?
I am, yes, because I've always been, because I'm an activist, I've always been mindful about what's happening in the community and what people are saying about the community. And because I'm a, you know, from a mining community, I am very much a socialist. Um, and I'm involved with the Human Library Project, and one of the original books in the Human Library Project. And we talk about what it's like to be trans. I tell people what it was like for me as a youngster. Um, but I just don't get. I mean, it's like Section 28 in the 80s for the gay community. It's happening now. But for me, being knowing what Tories are like, because I've been brought up with Tory governments when I was young, it's just an excuse so they can bring more draconian laws in, and it'll be us, the trans community, will be sidelined. Then it'll be the gay community, and then it'll be working class people, because that's how they do it. They do it step by step. And for me, it's not for me. If there's a toilet ban comes in, which they're threatening to have a toilet ban, you know, use of single sex spaces. If that ban comes in, I'm still going to the ladies. You know what I mean? They can lock me up if they want. Don't give a toss, because at my age, I'm not bothered anymore. You know, I'm not beholden to anybody. But for me, it's the youngsters. There must be young people, not only in Northern Ireland, but also in the rest of England, young trans people who are terrified about what's going to happen in the future. You know, where will they be? Will they be allowed to be the person who they are? And that for me is disgusting, to do that to children. Whenever I talk to parents about the children and gender issues, I always say you've got to give them the time to explore whether about gender issues or about sexuality, because children are a lot more intelligent than you think they are, you know. And maybe when they get to 16 or 17, they might think, well, I'm not really trans, I'm just gay. But you've got to give them that chance to make that decision. You've got to give them that chance to go on, if they feel that way, to go on to puberty blockers, to slow down the puberty until they get the chance to make a decision about who they are as a person. And it's all this rhetoric that's coming from these right-wing newspapers about trans women being paedophiles, sexual predators. The same happened to the gay community in the 80s. They're doing exactly the same to the trans community. And it's like I say when I'm talking to people, I say, look, when I go to the toilet, I go for a pee. I don't go to go molest anybody. And if a man wanted to rape a woman in a female toilet, he wouldn't dress up as a woman to do it, because it's about the power of masculinity, and wielding that power. And you can't wield masculinity if you're dressed in drag. You know what I mean? And it all this rhetoric are complete and utter lies. This about protecting girls and women. The same people that are shouting and screaming about transgender people are also screaming and shouting about the rights to abortion, the rights to gender protection, when it comes to violence and misogyny, and especially the American evangelists, right-wing evangelists, who are paying English TERFs, as we call them, trans exclusionary radical feminist groups, who's paying them, funding them to say the terrible things that they're saying. And it's to me, it's not about me. And I can't speak for every older trans person, but for me, it's the youngsters. I mean, we saw what happened to Brianna Gay. The police, it wasn't really an hate, when they first investigated it, it wasn't really an hate crime. If you stick a knife into somebody, that is a flipping hate crime, no matter how you're trying. But because she was transgender, it's not an hate crime. It's not been proven. Well, it has been proven because she was being bullied at school for being trans. The other disgusting thing that she was, I don't know if they managed to get a birth certificate sorted out, but there's all the possibility that she'd be born as a male, buried as a male. And she wasn't male, she was a girl. She was a wee 16-year-old female. And she was a gorgeous wee girl. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening to trans kids. They're becoming targets. And it's not fair. It's not fair, because it's like I tell everybody, trans people like everybody else. I want 2 weeks holiday a year, a nice car, a nice house, and a nice life to go on. Same as everybody else. We're no different. The only difference is that perhaps we've had issues with our gender. That's the only difference. And as I was saying, it's important to respect other human beings. And that's the way I was brought up. And I think for me, because I do the human library and we do it with schools, and talking to the kids, such a privilege, because they look at things that we might think are odd completely differently. They look at religion differently. They look at sexuality differently. And to me, it's wonderful to see them. They look at politics differently, and they're the ones that will save the world. I think the youngsters of today. I hope they will.
Absolutely. Jennifer, I've just made you a co-host in case this drops out again, so hopefully it will continue then, if I go offline. So just finally, what advice would you give to young people today who are maybe experiencing that gender dysphoria, and do you think there's enough help and support out there for them?
I think trans health has suffered greatly, but the National Health Service has suffered anyway under this government. It's not just trans people, and it is difficult. I think my advice would be was find somebody that has been through it, somebody that has transitioned, somebody that knows what it's like and what kind of feelings that you're having. Find somebody you can talk to, who find allies who can support you, because you can't do it on your own. To try and transition on your own with no help is nearly impossible, especially these days. You need support, and that's the first thing I would advise youngsters is get support. Get people who know what you're going through, people like you, people who have experienced exactly what you're going through, because they can help you. You know, um, we've all been in those deep, dark moments, and we can help stop you getting into those deep, dark moments. You know, and be open about it. Talk about it. There's nothing wrong with you. You're a human being. There's nothing wrong. It's just who you are. It's just one of those things. It's and it's not wrong. It's not a fad either, and it's not it's not evil, because human beings, when you're born, you're not born evil. You're
Yep.
born a baby. Yeah, and I think that for me it would be that it would be find us support. Whether it's your friends, who are maybe not trans themselves but are allies, who will call you by your proper pronouns and your proper name, you know, because you need that kind of support. You need that help.
Absolutely. And so for anyone who is watching this and does need to reach out, the Rainbow Project does offer counselling, and just get in touch. You can send them an email, contact them online,
Yeah, yeah,
or you can reach out to any one of us. We're all highly searchable online.
yeah, yeah, which is good.
Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to stop the recording.